Glenn,
Andrew,
mate,
how are
good to
you?
see you again.
Good to see you too, looking sharp.
Thanks, buddy. I tend to wear a suit every day. Just
Hey, very nice.
fits
Is that,
my,
is that a pocket square?
No, it's a fake one.
It's a fake one. Well, we don't want anything that's fake, do we?
It's not authentic.
No, it's not. And you've got my book there that's authentic.
Mate,
so
I love your book.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about it from people who've
I
really
wrote
read
it, so I've heard good things about it too.
Of
I
course,
enjoy that book. What are we doing?
Mate, I want to do some filming today because I get a lot of questions when I'm talking about you know, to corporates and to other groups, sporting groups and schools who are kind of keen to get you into present. And they go, look, I know this Glenn Manton, I've heard about him, you know, he's athlete, he does a bunch of things, he's a pro presenter. But I'm finding it hard to just sort of articulate what you kind of do.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
do you want to just give me a bit of background?
Well, what do I do in terms of my school stuff, my corporate stuff? I really try and put together programs, workshops that are very tailored to each group. So sometimes I'll wear something nice like this if it's a more corporate type setting. Otherwise, if I'm going in to really connect with people, I have to be my genuine self. So this is my genuine self, this is who I am, and I find with my audience, particularly those school-based audience, because I've got a big background in education, I've got a long history of teaching and working with young people through my charity White Line and so forth. If I step in front of that group in that garb, I'm out the door. Yeah. So I have to be able to connect with them by being, I guess, real within myself, and not only using that as a platform to connect visually, but then orally sharing my stories and getting involved in those spaces, especially with that, say, 16 through 21 market. If you're not right on, you're right out.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a challenge.
I'll
it's a
walk
real
in
challenge.
and go, what's his suit talking about? You know?
Yeah, but that's fine.
Probably my brand though, you know?
Yeah, that's your brand in terms of your day-to-day, but my brand is probably a little bit more, I guess, specific to that urban culture, if you like. And as I said, if it's a corporate group, of course, horses for courses, you tailor something that's appropriate for them. But school-based stuff, sporting clubs, you've got to be on point.
Yeah. Now, I know we talk a lot about being authentic, and I think that's, to me, that word represents you, you know, completely. But when we're doing presentation, how does that kind of work? Because, to be honest, I've heard so many good things. I mean, you know, the mutual friend who introduced us said, Glenn's the best presenter I've ever seen. Blows your mind.
Paid good money for that.
Yeah, absolutely, you know. But how do you articulate to people, you know, well, what do you get out of it?
Well, look, the book is, I'm going to be lazy and sit down for a second. The book is a really good example of where my speaking has evolved. And if you open it to any particular page, you've got a question, you've got space to answer. So we can close it, we open it up. So, you know, what are your thoughts on the media? Now, I could stand easily behind a lectern and lecture people about my opinions on the media. I've got a background in the media, I've studied media, and of course I've got my own personal views around what the media is. But that's me ramming something down the audience's throat. So what I've decided to do over the course of time is develop a series of questions, if you will, that I share in almost a speed dating format with large groups or small groups, so probably ranging from 20 through to 200. I run big speed dating workshops. I call them information exchange workshops, particularly when I'm working with corporates, just so the language is a little bit more, I guess, palatable. But the idea that you actually speed date with a whole series of people around the room and I facilitate the questions means that I can tailor it to the group. It means that I can involve it in an interactive fashion, my personality with the group. I can make, a lot of humorous insights, but I can also be very, very powerful with the touch points that I share on the back end of these questions. These questions, seemingly innocuous, some of them. You know, where did your first steps lead to in the morning? So this very morning, where did your first steps lead to? Was it the bathroom? Was it to a loved one? Did you get on the internet? Did you go straight into the kitchen? Was it cleaning up? There are so many insights that we can learn about one another. I'm going to ask you that this morning. Where did your first steps lead you? You'd like to think if you're in a family situation, it was trying to connect and build relationships. And I find that that is probably the one thing that this book and my presentations do. They build relationships, they strengthen communication, and they allow people to build a greater knowledge of self. And I would argue whether it's a school group or a corporate group or a sporting club, that is the absolute foundation
Yeah.
of anything and everything that you do.
Yeah.
So your bottom line is going to come back to relationships. It's going to come back to communication. It's going to come back to the knowledge of self that each person has.
Yeah, great.
So to me, it's almost a case of brand know. Know what your brand is. Brand know. So forget about brand new. Brand know. Know who you are. And I think that's the confronting thing for people when it comes to me, is that I do know who I am. I'm always evolving it. So if we were doing a session, we'd sit and I put the seats out in a very eclectic way in the room. Don't ask me how it works. You'd sit here. So grab a seat there and I'll sit down on a fictitious chair.
Yeah.
And we'd share a series of questions. Once we complete the question, we rotate through to other people in the room. So you get to spend time with at least 9 other people in the room having questions one-to-one. I come in on the back end and I share my stories or my insights to the question. So as a general rule, you might start off with 3 ice-breaking questions, then 3 transitional questions, then you go into 3 a lot more, I guess, focused questions. Maybe it's around the client, or maybe it's around a particular topic, or maybe it's just something that you feel like the audience is going to grow from.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of people, for want of a better example, asking me to share stories and thoughts around, let's say depression, mental health, suicide, these sorts of things, particularly for a younger audience.
Yeah.
And again, yeah, absolutely. As I said, the last thing I want to do though is stand behind that lectern and really preach.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, I'll take a simple name such as Robin Williams and I'll throw it out to the group. We'll share a discussion around it all, collate information on a whiteboard which I record electronically and send back to the group. And that way you've inadvertently touched on some really interesting subject matter with everyone having a voice rather than just me preaching to the group.
Yeah, I like it.
And that way they feel very empowered. They walk away with some real, as I said earlier, some touch points that they can work and research moving forward. And some personal knowledge from me around that topic. I just find it a much more engaging way to speak with people. Of course, I'll do keynotes and I'll do specific presentations, that's fine. But in terms of really what I love doing day to day, I love getting to those corporate places, those social school spaces and those particular community groups such as sporting clubs, and giving them a package that's a lot more well-rounded.
Yeah, I like it. Because I know you do like hundreds of school presentations.
Sure.
And obviously, big sporting background, you've got a lot of influence in the sporting clubs. And the corporates, that's my foundation. I came from the corporate environment. So, trying to position you, that's why I film these videos, to try and get you some, give the corporates a bit more insight into how you can help them. And I really like that, is that it's all about the communication brand them, which is very aligned with what I do, of course. So what sort of people in corporate, do you want to speak to? Is it smaller groups doing facilitation, or you can do large groups, you can do both?
Sure.
Give me some insights into what you've done before.
Yeah, sure. I feel like, is this mic in the way? You okay with that? We're fine?
That's fine.
Cool, no problems. In terms of the corporate market, it's a really challenging space, because I do think corporate Australia, in fact, the corporate conglomerate that is the world, does lose sight of the fact that if you do not have good relationships, if there is not strong communication, top down, bottom up, right across the board, and if people don't know who they are, so on the way to work, on the train, people are tackling all aspects of their life, and they're getting to work already emotionally drained, mentally exhausted, and unfortunately, due to the very nature of sitting down all day, there's that physical constraint on these people too. You're already, as they would say in classic Australian parlance, pushing it uphill. And these sorts of organisations, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, really need to invest in the most important cog in their entire industry, whether it's a group of 10 or 1,000 plus.
Yeah, great.
They need to invest in people.
Yeah.
So let's talk about people.
And there's a lot of those programs, but I think you take a different angle to what a lot of these people do.
Absolutely.
Is from real insight, I think. And to me, it's like peak performance. I mean, I know you've done an exercise program which is all about being the best, being your best.
Yeah.
So not being the best, being your personal best. And I think you can apply that a lot to these corporates. That a lot of people go in there half-baked. I mean, I've worked at corporate and I see people coming in and they're just punching the clock.
Yep.
They're just doing their time, and there'll be the appearance of work, but they're not really putting in maximum effort. Because you're right, because they're not connected to the guy next to them. They're not connected to the company. They're just drifting through life. And I think that if you can just change 1 or 2 of those people to be more switched on, put a bit more extra effort in and be more engaged, because they know themselves better and they're more connected, that's a massive impact on the business. I mean, it can be game changers for an organisation.
Absolutely, and as I said, it's about being able to relate to that person opposite. I mean, we couldn't look more different if we tried right now. But all of a sudden, if I ask you a question around what is your most treasured possession, and you say it's a bike that my father gave me when I was 9 years of age, and I'm thinking in my head, well, actually for me it was something my father gave me at the age of 15, 20, whatever it may be. All of a sudden we're breaking down the suit, we're breaking down the attire, we're going past the visuals, and we're really connecting here. So if we're sitting next to each other in an office, all of a sudden now we've got a touch point. We've got something that we can start further conversations from. If we're on a sporting field, once again, we've got a bond there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's been growing. So throughout my sporting life, for example, and also part of my school life, my corporate life, if you will, people had the opportunity to ask questions, but they didn't.
Yeah.
They're too busy going through, as you mentioned, Andrew, the motions. How do we just get from A to B to C to D?
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes it's good to sit with A.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy just to hide behind your screen. Put your headphones on, doing my thing.
Hit the same train, same train line, and go through the same front door and do it all again the next day.
Yeah.
Now, there's no doubt, unfortunately, we have to be adults, and the world constraints say that, you know, you've got to pay bills and you've got to be able to make, I guess, an impression in your working life each and every day. But how that impression looks, that's something that you can be creative.
Well, businesses are made of people, and people make the difference between a good business and a not so good business. So I fundamentally agree, and I think everyone knows that investing in people in the right way is a great reward.
Sure.
And I'm seeing a lot of points of difference between you and a lot of the corporate speakers who, to be honest, they do look and sound like me, because I do a lot of this sort of work as well. But I think your aspect is a bit more real and raw.
I can only sound like me.
Yeah.
And I've learnt that the hard way. I learnt that as early as grade 6, where my school principal, Mr. Corrie, hopefully he doesn't see this video at some stage. If we probably should have started rolling. You have rolled the camera.
Yeah, the camera's rolling, but we should probably set it up, shall we?
Well, I will. I'll sit
I'll
down.
tell you what, mate, we'll get started on the videos. You sit down and...
Well, I want to tell you about Mr. Corrie before you
okay,
go.
sure.
Don't go anywhere. Mr. Corrie was my grade 6 primary school teacher. And he told me at the conclusion of the grand final for cricket, now I can look to camera now too, at Strathmore Primary, so Melbourne's northwest if you will, the adjoining suburb to Essendon where I grew up. He told me at the conclusion of that grand final when we lost that I was to come back to school on Monday and stand in front of 500 students and staff and explain why we lost. Now, that's a big ask for an 11-year-old boy
11.
as the school captain of cricket to stand up and talk about why we lost the game of cricket. And this is probably where my public speaking journey began.
Wow.
And I turn up on Monday with my mother's words ringing in my ear saying, "Be honest, speak clearly." Now, like anyone, sometimes I fumble over my words, so I can't guarantee a 100% strike rate around speaking clearly, but I like to think I do a fairly reasonable job, so I'll give myself a 99% score there. But in terms of authenticity, being honest, I am 100% honest at all times with my general life, with my speaking life. They absolutely mirror one another. So I stood in front of the audience, and I'd gone to the trouble of putting up my little bubble writing heading type why we lost the cricket grand final, and after 3 or 4 words I actually stepped away from the lectern, stood in front of the lectern, and I said, we actually lost the grand final because I was an arrogant cricket captain. And the air just basically evaporated from the room, and the audience, I could tell the audience was right with me then, and I thought, you know what, if I'm honest, you really can capture people's imaginations. Now, you need to know how to temper that. You need to know what to share, when to share it, when to listen, how to take it all in. But that was the moment when I thought, you know what, I can do this public speaking thing. So combine that with my educational background, my experience in live television, the writing that I do, my creativity, it means that the audience is getting something that's a pretty unique package, not just run-of-the-mill, and as I said, tailored specifically to their needs, whatever it is that their particular organisation, school, sporting group wants and needs. And I think that sets me apart.
Love it.
All right, let's get into it then. So, Andrew, if you come over this side. All right.
We're getting into it now. I thought we were into it.
No, that's right. Just slide your chair across for me, please.
Which way?
Just go that way for me.
Going
Yep,
left.
that's it.
Nice.
Yep, Ripper.
Perfect.
All right, cool. So, we ready to get started?
Well, we've done it, haven't we?
I think it's pretty much done.
Do we need to do anything more?
I guess we could use that. Yeah, sure.
I'm going to give it 2 thumbs up.